Well, it does come as many of the latest polls continue to show Liberals are in the lead, and that includes Abacus Data, whose latest numbers you're looking at right now. Abacus giving Liberals a 4-point lead over the Poilievre Conservatives as it stands. Well, we're happy to have David Coletto back onto the program this evening to talk about his latest numbers. David is the president and the CEO of Abacus Data. David, good to see you.
So nice to see you, Michael.
So, we noted it right off top, the Liberals still holding the lead in your top line numbers. And we'll dig into that in a moment. But I wonder, first and foremost, what your take is on the political button issues, because they were distributed apparently by Liberals at a Conservative rally. What kind of impact could these kinds of dirty tricks, I guess, have on the Liberal lead?
Well, I think it's not helpful if this story gets widely known and understood, and it's the perfect thing that can spread over an Easter weekend conversation. I think it goes to the heart of the challenge that the Liberals don't want to recreate, which is this idea that they're not taking this election seriously, and that's been Mark Carney's strength, is that not only is he not a typical politician because he has so little elected political experience, but that he's really positioned himself as this serious person for serious times. And so, these shenanigans, if we're going to call it that, challenge that. And I think it's an unfortunate thing for the Liberals politically if this becomes more widely known, and there's other examples of it that get raised over the campaign.
Yeah, if there are other examples, so we're going to keep watching for that. But let's talk about your numbers now. You said Liberals are very much in the lead, but break that down for us, if you will, into regions. What are they telling you about where this election will be determined?
Well, it's they've got a 4-point lead nationally, but underneath that, they've got, for example, a 10-point lead, the Liberals in Ontario. They're ahead by over 20 in Atlantic Canada, ahead by 13 in Quebec, and they're tied in British Columbia. And you look at those numbers, it signals a very clear Liberal advantage, that they could win by a few points nationally, but win a majority government, largely because their vote has always been more efficient, and they're racking up the kinds of numbers that Justin Trudeau won in 2015, and in some cases better. And so the regionals look even better than the national number for the Liberals. And that's why, I think by all accounts right now, they have the advantage with 2 weeks left to go.
Okay, regionals looking better than national, which I think explains when people are talking about the Liberals are headed towards a majority, it helps really illustrate that. But are there any swings or trends that you're watching out for? Because yes, we're past the halfway mark in this campaign, but there's still a couple of weeks left in this.
There is, and more than, about 4 in 10 Canadians say they haven't yet made up their mind fully. We know that close to a third may not even make up their mind, before that last weekend, before they go and vote. But there are a few things. This is debate week. And we know that in our research, Canadians overwhelmingly say they're going to likely tune in. 58% say they're going to tune into the English debate. About a quarter say they'll tune into the French. And so I think there's a lot of people out there who have a sense of who these leaders are, have a sense of how they might vote, but might be tuning in to see this one chance in their own language of the leaders standing side by side, and to do that comparison as debates can do. Now, we might find after the debate that nothing really changes because these debates simply reinforced what people already thought. But I do think there's still a sense of, not a volatility in the electorate, but a softness there that suggests something big could still change the trajectory of this race.
Okay, a softness, as you say, and yes, the French language debate is Wednesday, the English language debate is Thursday. Still a lot to watch out, see if that has an impact on things. But it's one thing to say that you support a party, or this person supports one party over the other. It's another thing for that person to actually go out and vote. I'm wondering, when you look at your data sets, David, is there anything that might tell us about how reliable the support is for political parties, how much they can actually bank on the numbers that we're looking at right now?
Well, we do ask in our surveys, how likely are you to vote? How interested are you in this campaign? Indicators to give us a sense of not just, as you said, would you support somebody, but will you? And will you turn out and vote? And there are two things that stand out. The one is we do see that Canadians, even today, are more interested in this election campaign than they've been for the last two, which is a good sign in terms of engagement and turnout. And two, when we ask people, are you going to vote? more about 68% of Canadians say they definitely will be. Now there's big differences depending on how old you are. Those under 30, just about half say they're definitely going to vote. That rises to close to 8 in 10 or more among those over 60. So there's still a big age difference. But right now I still have this sense, based on the research that we're seeing, that Canadians are tuned into this, and that means there's interest. And there's been debate about whether these polls are real, whether you can believe them, because a lot of people point to Pierre Poilievre's rallies and say, well, look at the energy there. Well, the data backs that up. Conservatives are engaged in this election. The problem politically for them is so too are Liberals. And so you almost have no real advantage to either party on who their supporters are most likely to turn out and vote on election day.
Very interesting to keep in mind. We talk about the debates coming up, and I said the French language debate was first, but of course we had a little bit of a preview, or at least Quebecers did last night, because of Tout le monde en parle, where both Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre made appearances, interviewed separately during that program. I wonder what you are finding right now on leaders' impressions, because certainly when it came to Monsieur Poilievre, there were many questions from the hosts of Tout le monde en parle about his character, and getting onto whether or not he was being too blunt or too harsh. What are Canadians telling you about leader impressions right now at this point in the campaign?
Well, I think that reflects what a lot of people are thinking, right? They're two very different. If you take Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre, I think Canadians would look at both of them and say these are two very different individuals, both in terms of their experience, but also in terms of their approach to communication, to how they're likely to govern. And I think, over the last 2 years, a lot of Canadians were looking at Mr. Poilievre and saying, that's the kind of energy I want. I want somebody who's reflecting the frustrations I'm feeling, the anger I feel in some cases. But today, I think there's more who are actually looking for a calmer, stabler, kind of less disruptive force. And so that's really what this election, I think, has ultimately been about, is what kind of leader are we looking for? It's not so much about policy. And so I think these debates actually will create an opportunity for people to see both of these leaders and the others, and get a sense of what kind of leadership do they want. And it's not just about, again, what are you going to do, but how are you going to do it? And I do think that Mr. Poilievre has been almost on his back foot a little bit because of comparisons with Donald Trump and the like that have turned some people off, particularly women generally, and particularly some young women in particular.
Okay, well, interesting point in the debate, interesting discussion as always, David. Thank you for that. David Coletto of Abacus Data.
Thanks, Michael.